should try to catch my eye. Well, they can shout and cry, 'cause you're my one guy. So say
All right, so thank you so much for joining us once again. Episode number 10 of Lunch Out Loud Ottawa. My name is Nick Baczewski.
And I'm Andrew Miller.
And the lovely voice you just heard there, that was Renee Yoxon. So she is a local jazz vocalist, composer, and lyricist. Mark Ferguson, of course, is on the piano. So that song was called There's Only You. It's off her newest CD, Here We Go Again. That came out in December, so it's available everywhere now. And we hope you listen to it. This is our first time having a jazz singer on, and it's great.
Good. I liked it.
It's really nice. And you can catch her Mondays at the Mercury Lounge. And she does have upcoming shows in Toronto as well, so please check her out. It just reminds me of when I lived in Australia, in Melbourne. There was a huge jazz scene, and I had no idea about it. And then I was told by a group of friends, we're going out to jazz clubs tonight, and it was just so much fun to see, so many people huddled around the jazz players and having a great party, and everybody's in a great mood, and it was just something different. Hopefully we can get some more of that going on in Ottawa. So anyways, we have a very special guest today. We have the Parliamentary Budget Officer, Kevin Page.
Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you. I'm buying the album, by the way.
Excellent.
I promise.
Good.
That's excellent. And so for those of you who do not exactly know who Kevin Page is, we want to share the light on this excellent this excellent civil servant that we have in the city.
We are here to educate.
We're here to educate, of course. So Rick Mercer recently just did a rant that I essentially sums up him. So we're going to play that first, and then we'll get to know him, and then we'll talk more about the PBO position and much more. So we'll just play that right now, and we'll be back in just a minute. So.
On March 25th, in the not-so-distant future, Canada's first parliamentary budget officer, Kevin Page, will retire after 5 years on the job. And hats off to Stephen Harper for creating that position in the first place. But now that Page is leaving, I got to tell you, I'm going to miss the little guy. Not only because I believe he served his country well, but because by doing so, he drove so many cabinet ministers completely mad. I like that in a guy. In fact, if I had to write an eHarmony profile, that would be right up there with enjoys long walks on the beach and has a sense of humor. But he did his job. His job is to provide an independent analysis of this country's finances, which is important because if history has taught us anything, it's that governments, all governments, they tend to, what's the word I'm looking for here? They lie about this stuff. It was Page who first said, oh, hey, Canada, you know those fighter jets that the government wants to buy, and they say they're going to cost $16 billion? They're going to cost $30 billion plus. In response, the government launched an all-out character assassination on the guy. And it turns out Page was the one telling the truth. There's been no apology. On old age security, on deficit projections, on spending cuts, he's always done his job. And he's been called every name in the book, often by people who've never even read one. And now, his job is vacant, and the word is in Ottawa that there's not a single person in this country qualified for the job who's willing to do it. And it pays $160,000 a year. Nobody wants the job. Why? Look at the job description. Serve your country, tell the truth, get attacked by the government for doing so. Jim Flaherty once said famously, there's no such thing as a bad job in Canada. Well, if you trust the markets, looks like telling the truth in Ottawa qualifies.
Well, there you have it. So hopefully that sheds a little bit of light for those of you that didn't know who Kevin Page was or exactly what a parliamentary budget officer entails. So first, we'll get back to all that and the duties that you've accomplished or, problems that you faced over the last couple of years. But first, we'd kind of like to know Kevin Page as a person. You've been in Ottawa, obviously, for a little while now. What brought you to Ottawa, and what has kept you here over the last couple of years, besides your dream job, of course, here?
Well, actually, what brought me to Ottawa in around 1980-81 was a job at the Department of Finance. And what kept me here was quality of life. And some of the things I know, Andrew, Nick, you're very interested in maintaining that quality of life. Just a great place to raise a family, and actually a good place to develop a career as well.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So what do you do in your spare time when you're not stuck up here in your office? What do you like to do for fun in town?
Well, depending on the season, right now, winter time, if hopefully we get some fresh snow.
Yeah, if you could call this winter at, double digits yesterday.
Last week we had the -40, so...
Yeah, -40s to +10s to maybe -20 in the next couple of days. If we get some snow on the weekend, I'll be cross-country skiing in the park. And I also coach a minor peewee hockey team. These are young boys about 11 years of age. That keeps me busy. I was on the ice last night. We'll be playing again this weekend, and just hanging out with my wife and my dog, Marley.
That's fun. So peewee hockey, are they? Is that a contact league yet?
It is. It's when contact
That's
starts.
when they just start, right?
Yeah. And some love it, and others like it less so.
Yeah, the bigger guys usually like it, and the littler guys not so much.
Yeah, we have
right?
some young kids in the team, the smaller ones too, that they're pretty feisty.
Yeah.
Have you started using the helmets that were developed in Ottawa? The new ones that can send the data about if it's a major collision or anything like that?
No, actually, but that
Some
is
of
a good
those.
idea. Yeah, we've had. Fortunately, we really haven't had any really major significant hits to the head, which is obviously a significant conversation with Hockey Canada.
That's good.
And what about the summer? What are your favorite activities that drive to Ottawa in the summer?
I love to bike ride. If there's no snow, I bike ride to work. I love barbecuing on the weekends when my kids are in town too. They're away at university now, so I take charge on the weekend with the barbecue. And coaching, but actually a little baseball, Challenger League baseball.
That's
Yeah,
fun.
kids at different ages with different challenges.
And you run you were just recently telling us about the event that sometimes you have out at Lynx Stadium. I still like calling it Lynx Stadium, even though it's called Ottawa Stadium, and we're still waiting to hear what's going to go on with baseball in Ottawa. But can you tell us a little more about that event?
Yeah, well, every few years we celebrate the kids, and we bring in parents. We bring in actually players. If we have a AA or AAA or single A kind of baseball team, they show up at the Diamond. We get politicians and we get announcers, people like you, to introduce the kids, and we dress up the field. And we make the kids feel incredibly special because they are incredibly special.
That's great. And you're saying that you got some, a couple of celebrity appearances from different
Yes,
baseball stars and whatnot.
Baseball stars, but also including people that have been on your show recently, including Mr. Watson shows up too.
Yeah, he seems to be everywhere, that guy.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and so hopefully that's a plea to get more baseball back in Ottawa. I know I really want it back, and I know the IBL's not here this year, which is sad because I always liked when golf came up and played here. So I guess here's one question. If you have people up from another city, other than the Parliament buildings and the usual things, what kind of hidden gems in Ottawa do you like to show them that we have?
Well, I don't know if the Gatineau Park is hidden, but it's just an enormous gem. I mean, having traveled from around the country, to have a park like that where in the summertime you could use it for swimming and bicycling and hiking, and in the wintertime it's just this amazing cross-country ski place where you can go a few kilometers and you could stop in a lodge and ski a few more kilometers. It's a winter wonderland. To me, it's a gem, and I do take people up to the park and hike and ski.
Yeah, myself as well, actually. When I have people visiting from out of town, I tend to go up there and, go up overlooking the Gatineau Hills and from Lookout Point there. And it's gorgeous up there. One thing we always like to talk about is restaurants. I don't know if you're a big foodie or you like eating out a lot. If you have a couple of spots that you tend to favor in town, we'd love to hear about them. I'm not too sure if...
Well, I mean, given working life pretty much every day, and I'm a person that kind of follows rituals. I go see my friend Claudio, the soup guy at the World Exchange and Plaza, and he's a bit famous for his soups. And he has soups. I suspect he probably has a soup for Mr. Watson as well too. And actually, I have a soup, though he never stands to serve my soup. So,
what's your soup? What's in your soup?
Yeah, it's a good question. He hasn't served it in such a long time. I actually forget what's included in it. I think it's probably more of a mulligatawny type of soup.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I see Claudio almost every day, and I know the people on a first-name basis there. And then, on the weekends, I have friends that actually one friend that I coach his daughter in the Challenger Little League Baseball, Ferdy, who has run many restaurants in town, like Cyrano's and Tavola, and he's, I think, in the process of setting up another restaurant. So I love his cooking. It's more Mediterranean style food. And I live in Barrhaven. On the corner of my street is the Greenfields pub. And my kids have worked there, and so we frequent there as well too. So Yeah, it's I get connected to people, so and I tend to kind of keep going.
Greenfield's still a pretty busy place from what I gather. I know a couple of people that still live out in Barrhaven. I know it's a quite popular spot on the weekends still, for the evening crowds, if you will.
And when karaoke gets on, and I haven't partaken in karaoke, but my kids will often get involved in that, and then because I live a block away, I become the sleepover place for a karaoke night.
Well, at least you know where your kids are.
Yeah, they're in my basement.
Exactly, along with the rest of the neighborhood. But that's good.
Will you be watching the Super Bowl this weekend? Are you a football fan?
I will watch it, but it's I'm not a big. I have friends that are enormous football fans, and but I will watch it just out of duty.
Yeah,
so I can
for the commercials.
Yeah, commercials, and at least have some type of conversation with my friends after the game is over. But I have no idea who's going to win.
No, you don't know who's going to win. Okay.
No,
because we do.
Yeah,
we're not going to disclose. We're not going to disclose that
we
here.
Can't. That's touchy information.
But living in Barrhaven, how long have you been living in Barrhaven? Was that your first home in Ottawa, or?
Yeah, pretty much our first home in Ottawa. We've been there for 15, actually probably more like 20 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so and we've had a couple different homes. I live on a quiet crescent in the older part of Barrhaven, and we were attracted to that because we have a school on the street. I could in fact often I coach, as I said, and Walter Baker's like 2 blocks away, so I can I get off the bus, I could walk to the hockey rink.
You have the tennis center right there.
Tennis, like literally walking distance out. So yeah, we've been there. We've raised our kids. They're kind of adults now, so. But yeah, it's been a great community to raise.
So you've got to see Barrhaven grow up as it's been rapidly evolving over the last few years. Anyway.
Incredible process, from just a few thousand people to like a city in its own right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Movie theater, multiple bars.
Oh, it's incredible. And now that they're building the bridge, hopefully which should be done, I believe next year, 2014, to connect Riverside South and Barrhaven. So hopefully that'll alleviate some of the traffic problems. I know it's quite tricky. I know when I have showings out there in the 5 o'clock range, it's pretty tricky getting out there. But again, hopefully that'll be all taken care of.
All right, so we'll just take a quick break now and listen to one more song from Renee Yoxon. It's called Just As We Are, and then when we get back, we'll get into more stuff about the Parliamentary Budget Officer. So we'll be back in just a moment.
We match like a new pair of shoes. Why go spoil it all with a pair of I-do's? Can we stay just as we are? Our love's still shiny and new. No fuss, no fights, staying up all night, whispering dreamily. We should stay just as we are, just you and me, just you and me, just you and me, just you and me.
All right, so that was a great...
What a voice.
What a voice. Just As We Are by Renee Yoxon. So the CD is now available.
Buy the CD.
Buy the CD.
I'm buying it.
There you go.
So Kevin, I guess just to enlighten our listeners, what exactly is the Parliamentary Budget Officer position? How was it started? How were you asked to do it? And we'll go through that and then to the future.
Well, the position before McWhirster's rant was, even the way it was set up was through the Accountability Act. So it's a new position. I'm the first Parliamentary Budget Officer. And I provide, under the legislation, independent analysis on the economy, on the nation's finances. I help with the scrutiny of the estimates. I provide costing on legislation that parliamentarians are looking at. And so, again, it's in the Act of Parliament. It, defines my relationship to certain parliamentary committees, House Finance Committee, Senate Finance Committee, Public Accounts Committee. And so that's the genesis. I think also part of the genesis is, I think when it's just the Conservative government, the current government that created this position, when they were in opposition, they felt that they wanted additional support to hold the government to account on economic and fiscal projections, and they wanted more data points around costing legislation. And I think they wanted just more front-end due diligence as well when we're launching major projects, to spend more of our unfortunately, our taxpayer dollar, but at the front end as opposed to the back end after the money's been spent and we've made mistakes. And we've done our best over the past 5 years to try to live up to those aspirations.
And how did he approach you? How was that how did he come to you for this position, and how did you come to?
Yeah, I understand. Obviously, this is a position where education is key, and I know from reading up on you, you do have quite a good educational background. I don't know if you could touch base on that, of why you were qualified a little bit more than the next guy, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I did have my background is working in government, starting 1980-81, working in the Department of Finance, but also working in the Privy Council office in the Treasury Department, in the budget community. And when this position was being discussed, with discussions around the Accountability Act, I was working for the Prime Minister as a public servant. I was his Assistant Secretary for Macroeconomic Policy. So I was an economist by training, and a graduate degree at Queen's, and the experience of working in the budget material. But to be honest, nobody wanted to be the Parliamentary Budget Officer. It's kind of the short end of the straw. Because most people feel that governments really don't want to be held accountable. And so I think it's this job and the experience, I think it's created some disruption in the system. And we've been criticized for different things at different points in time. But at the end of the day, we feel our work's been very credible. And so we stand by our work.
I agree. Do you feel that the position provides more of a scapegoat? Is that why nobody sort of wants the position, that you seem to be the one to blame when things arise, or why would nobody want this position like that?
Well, I think part of it's a culture that's evolved over time around secrecy around budget material, a culture that doesn't really like what we would call analytical dissonance, just to challenge numbers. In fact, we don't just challenge numbers; we put out our own estimates and we put out methodologies, and we get our work, particularly the costing work, we done peer reviewed by experts in the field. And I think there's a cultural aspect to this as well. And and the tradition, is that the Department of Finance would prepare budgets. They would be provide the planning frameworks for these budgets. And the costing, the tradition was that Parliament would see one costing estimate, and it would come from the public service and the government. And now they get to see, in some cases, two costing estimates and a different set of projections or different analysis around risks around those projections. So that is different.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And one major thing, I remember seeing you at the Young Canadians in Finance speech, and I go to a lot of those, and everybody was hanging on every word. It was an incredible speech. But you give a lot to teamwork. You and then even lately you've been saying a lot about your team, and I just love that because it's very important. Can you explain more about your concept of teamwork and how you built your team, and possibly about the story that I really liked was the Afghan mission budget and how you came about to cost that, and that was it's never been done.
Yes, I think we all know that nobody gets anywhere by themselves, and it's you cannot produce the volume of work and hopefully the quality of work that we've done without a really strong team. And I think people that came to this type to do, to help us build the Parliamentary Budget Office, they sort of self-selected. They saw this as an opportunity to be a public servant in a different way and provide the same kind of analysis we provided to the executive or to the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister in the past, but just make it available to Parliament, to Canadians, in a very different business model. And with respect to our very first report costing the Afghanistan engagement, we started on the office. We were probably less than a handful of people at the time when we got a request from a member of Parliament, Mr. Dewar, a local MP, and he asked us to cost the engagement. And it was, on the one hand, it was just an amazing opportunity to do something completely different and perhaps to launch the office with a really significant analytical piece. And on the other hand, it was a very frightening experience because you're just a few people. But it actually, necessity is the mother of invention, and so it forced us to work in a very open way. So, working with, to the extent that we could, with DND officials, Department of National Defense officials, working with Americans, working with the Brits and the Aussies, we were able to put together what we thought was a kind of a first-class methodology, and then working with D&D officials to try to put data around that methodology, and then getting it peer reviewed. And I think it did, it kind of cemented our business model going forward. That's how we will do costing. But it was also very controversial because, as it turned out, we were under a lot of pressure to produce that during an election campaign. And people often ask me, why did you do that? And the only reason why we did that was because the Prime Minister said to do it.
Yeah.
And, all the party leaders said to do it. And, we thought it would have been quite a bold move not to do it if you were requested by the Prime Minister.
And then you suffered a lot of flack because of it.
And it turned out to be a controversial event, which I would prefer to have avoided. But again, it was perhaps a lose-lose, catch-22 type situation. But in the interest of transparency, and given that there were parliamentarians that wanted us to release it, we released it.
And I think Canadians thank you for that, because outside of the bubble of Ottawa, people have this. A lot of people have the view that we're just overspent. They're always here overspending. They hear these massive budgets, and you're the one combating for them. You're the one out there to prove that we are on task, we are on budget. The government is speaking and doing things in that consortium kind of approach.
Thank you.
Now, you were the first parliamentary budget officer, and this only started in 2008. What did we do before? Is this position, because it didn't exist before, is this why we're in the position now?
Yeah.
And what's going to happen once you leave? Is this position going to evaporate, or to me it sounds necessary to have this position?
And the United States have had it for a lot longer than us as well, right?
Yes, there are legislative budget offices in other parts of the world, and as Nick, as you said, like the United States, it started in the mid-1970s, and there's been a very strong office since then. A lot of these types of offices are now kind of showing up in different parts of the world. Australia recently launched one. The United Kingdom has had one for a few years. They're called fiscal councils in other parts of Europe right now, but they're being, they're showing up in different parts of Europe, Southern Europe too as well. We didn't have a legislative budget office in the past, and I think there was, what's the impact? I think we were getting to a point where less and less information of the type that was absolutely necessary for parliamentarians to do their jobs, which just wasn't getting to parliamentarians, so they weren't put in a position to scrutinize spending. They weren't seeing what we call decision support financial analysis when they were voting on new legislation or on procurement. And again, our system, Westminster system, is based on the concept of the legislature holding the government to account. And there's lots of literature, why nations succeed, why nations failed, and one of one of the key principles is that governments need to be held accountable and responsive. So then the question is, are we going to give our parliamentarians the information they need to do that? And it's a noble task that they come. And again, it's not just the opposition parties that need to do this. It's government MPs as well that don't sit. Our cabinet ministers are supposed to hold accountability officers, deputy ministers to account, and their colleagues, cabinet ministers as well.
And can you update us? I just recently read that the NDP is trying to table a motion about extending your stay at the PBO. What can you say about that? The possibility of it happen, and would you accept it? Would you?
Yeah. Well, I think as Mr. Mercer said in his rant that my 5 years is up as the first parliamentary budget officer. I've said I would do one term, not more than one term. Yeah. I wanted to be able to speak out earlier in this term that explain why to Canadians, to parliamentarians, why the legislation was flawed. And so it's a bit of a juncture right now, and so there's a process underway within the Library of Parliament to find the next parliamentary budget officer. And I think I don't think this process will be completely done by March 25th, which is the last day of my appointment. If asked and if the government agreed and it was supported, would I stay on for a few extra months? Absolutely, to make sure that there's a good transition. And in this office, we all worked very hard to make it what it is today. So certainly I would stay on.
And you wrote your your recipes for the next parliamentary and how to find and do all that. So that's very interesting. I hope that hopefully it's implemented. I hope they do listen to what you're saying. I hope this position's not abolished. I think all of Canada would be at a loss if this position's abolished.
Thank you.
So that's good. But I guess we're of course we run out of time at around this time.
Always.
Just a couple of events that we do want to get out there because.
But first, you got to buy the album.
First, we're going to buy the album.
Yeah, we're going to buy the album, and everybody else. Out there
we'll have details on the website of how you can get the album and whatnot.
Let's get a better jazz scene going. So, I just want to talk a quick second about the Bus to Move. event that will be coming up in March. So it's a full day of workout classes from Zumba to yoga. A lot of people at different jobs and in the offices pledged to raise $1,000 to support the Ottawa Regional Cancer Foundation and breast health. So it's an excellent, with many events that are going through. So it's March 2nd at the Ottawa Athletics Club, and this year we have Jenny McCarthy. So
there you go.
Yeah, she has the Wii game that a lot of people are using. She has been a spokesperson for Weight Watchers. She's fun, active, so I think she'll be an excellent spokesperson. So type of events like this could be February 3rd. There's Zumba at One Tooth Activewear. There's a wedding dress sample sale February 9th at the St. Laurent Center. And there's going to be many more events. So all these events are trying to raise money for the March 2nd event. So that's going to be very good. Also, we have the Cracking Up the Capital that's coming out February 6th to 9th. There's 4 different days. This comedy festival is starting to get a little bigger. It's not rivaling Just for Laughs in
Not yet, but hopefully it does soon.
But hopefully it does soon. So they had a group on to sell tickets. So hopefully a lot of people are going to be going to that event. That'll be a lot of fun. Anything that you want to speak about right now?
Nothing off the top of my head. I saw when you clicked on there, I saw some event called the Booby Ball.
Yeah, we'll talk about more. That's February 22nd. So
we got lots of time to talk about that.
Got lots of time to talk about that.
So make sure you tune in.
Yes.
So next week, who do we got? We got
Susie Kendrick.
Susie Kendrick.
So it's going to be
from Lily Bell Communications. That should be a good one.
Yeah, she just started her new company, and it's going to be very exciting.
We'll be live from Westboro then. So I guess a quick thank you very much, Kevin, for being on our show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Hopefully, your listeners, you learned a little bit more about where we are at with our government and our spending and the economy today, and hopefully where we're going is going to be a good place.
And as always, tell your friends to go on Facebook, like us on Facebook, facebook.com/LOLOttawa. I think we'll be getting a Twitter account soon, so it just won't be me tweeting it out. And thank you very much, and have a great week. We're going to finish it with one last song. It's called Drinking Coffee, which certainly a lot of people in the city can relate to with the number of coffee shops. So it's called Drinking Coffee, and it's Renee Yoxon. And see you next week. Thank you so much.
Take care.
The coffee at the bottom of my cup is cold and bitter, but I choke it down and hope the hurt gets swallowed on the way. I keep the cup pressed to my lips, even though it's empty, and I hold it very still until the trembling goes away. But I don't know why I try to hide these feelings, and I don't know why I try to hide this pain. 'Cause even though you're right across the table from me, darling, I could wail and I could shout, I could let myself cry out, go on drinking coffee and never ask me to explain. Oh, you'd go on drinking coffee and never ask me to explain. I often think of packing up a bag and walking out, never turning back to see if you put up a fight. But our baby boys, they have your eyes, and how could mama tell them your daddy never treat me wrong, but he never treat me right. So I go on trying to hide all these feelings, and I go on trying to hide all this pain. But even though you're right across the table from me, darling, I could could wail and I could shout. I could let myself cry out.